Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Speaking Sessions podcast. I've got Mills Bender here. She is also known as Money Mills Knows Bills. She's a financial coach, speaker, author, and the founder and owner of Mills Knows Bills, which is a company dedicated to teaching individuals and businesses how to master their money within 90 days. Mills started her financial journey in the fall of 2014 when she found herself with only $1.50, pretty crazy, to her name. And now she's a multi-trillionaire. No, just kidding.
I
wish. All in 90 days. I mean, get rich quick. No, I'm just kidding. Mills is not about that. But she understands the frustration around money management, struggling with where to start and the courage it takes to take ownership of your finances. But today we're going to get into how to have conversations and present, especially on money topics. That's a hard thing to talk about, but how she goes through and prepares for presentation with both the masses and on an individual consulting basis. But Mills, go ahead and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I feel like you gave everybody the business background, so I'll share a little bit about my personal life. I am one of 6 kids. If y'all have ever seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, that is 100% my family, except we're Italian. So everybody's in everybody else's business. I have 10 beautiful nieces and nephews, as well as a goddaughter. One of my sister's pregnant right now. I'm pregnant right now. So my kid will be grandbaby number 12 of the generation. I've been married for about 4.5 years. We have a dog named Bear. I love reading, hiking, cooking. I think that's about it. I'm a nerd through and through.
Nice.
Oh, and
I
movies.
love it.
And movies. I love movies.
Nice. I love it. So is this going to be like really crazy? Are you in like that hormonal stage? I know my wife had some craziness going on whenever she was pregnant not too long ago. Or is this going to be, we're good? All right. I'll make sure to tiptoe around things. No, I'm just kidding.
No, in all honesty, it's been fine. Now that I know that I have the pregnancy hormones and the emotional fluctuations, it's easier to manage. But let's just say before I knew I was pregnant, I thought the world was falling apart. I thought I was going crazy and losing my mind, which I kind of was a little bit, but most of it was pregnancy hormones.
Nice. Well, actually, I'm going to ask you about that. Like, how did you navigate that? Because it's not every day we get somebody that has just dealt with that and that's fresh on their mind. Because I mean, just emotions in general. We don't have to talk about pregnancy emotions or anything, but just emotions in general. How do you handle that when having conversations with people? Because I mean, you're having to do that on a daily basis with your business.
Right. So I say I'm a financial coach, but I also quasi-jokingly say that I'm also a financial therapist. So when it comes to dealing with other people's money and their situations around it, it can get very emotional very quickly. Money is emotional. Look at how the stock market performs. Yes, there are some economic factors that play a part, but most of the time it's a reflection of people's emotional standpoint and view of how the market's going to go. So in terms of navigating those emotional conversations, first, I just like to listen. I find that the longer I'm quiet, the more somebody shares. I hold space for them. I listen, I encourage them. And sometimes people just want to be heard. I will not give therapy advice because I am not a therapist by any means, but I listen. And if there is a financial piece of advice that I can give to help curb those emotions, of course, I do follow through on that as well.
And listening is actually a very key thing, especially when it comes, obviously, with coaching, but with speaking in general. If you're not listening to your audience and what they're wanting, you're not going to do very well at speaking because you can speak about whatever you think they want to hear, but if it's not what they want to hear, it's not going to work. So that is a very key point. It's funny. A lot of coaches talk about how they feel like they're a therapist as well. Is that, I mean, that is part of it. I mean, it's part of life. You have to be there for the person that you're coaching and helping them get through, because I mean, that's just a part of it. It's part of the emotions.
Absolutely. And I'm always surprised by when I'm quiet and I listen and wait for them to continue responding in that awkward silence.
Mm-hmm.
It's not meant to be awkward on purpose, but it allows me to identify what they're actually thinking. And 9 times out of 10, they're wanting to know about a topic that I would have not guessed they wanted to know about. Right. That's how I've landed some of my best clients, was just by listening and hearing what they wanted to learn about, and then being able to tailor that conversation to them rather than giving them something cookie cutter.
Yeah, that's so good too. And a lot of people, yeah, they feel like they have to kind of do that cookie cutter thing. Here's the system, here's the process. We're just going to go through this. And I had an experience with this. I won't name the company, and I don't remember the guy's name, but I had spoken with a financial advisor, and we were going through, and of course, first thing, and I get it, he wants to go through and talk about life insurance. And I'm like, look, I'm looking more for the investing piece right now. I still got to have that conversation with my wife. Long story there, but she didn't want to be on the call. And he's like, look, if you're not doing the life insurance, we can't work together. So I said, all right, sounds good.
Interesting.
Hung up the phone, and my buddy was trying to get into it. So they were kind of doing like a duo call together, but this guy was kind of running it and everything. And then my buddy told me afterwards, he's like, why did he seem so upset? And I'm like, because you didn't listen to me. I literally said, I understand what you're saying. I understand that's something that's needed. I don't disagree, but can we table this for now and move on over here to this topic? And you're just like, nope, got to go through my process. So it's sad that people do that.
And especially when talking to somebody, whether it's a presentation or a conversation or anything in between, if you as the information provider are so set on just getting out your information, the end person is not going to listen to anything you say until they have whatever's on their mind covered first. Right? They want to make sure they have their question answered first. So we need to be the ones that are adaptable in that conversation.
Yeah, and that actually brings up a good point that I want to make sure we covered. When it comes to that one-on-one consultation, it doesn't sound like you do this, but when you started out doing it, were you like super structured and super rigid? I find when people get into public speaking and they start creating their speech, what they do is literally write down every single word, and they try and memorize the whole speech, and it messes them up when they go to do that speech because they forgot a line, and that threw them off for the rest of the speech. Is that how you started, or how did you get started with that one-on-one consultation?
So I actually didn't give my first mass presentation until maybe a year and change into the business. So I actually only focused on one-on-ones at first.
Okay.
And when I first began, everything was 100% custom to the client. I had a mental checklist of things that I knew they should have based off of what I had done with previous people, whether it be family, friends, my own personal finances. But in all honesty, there wasn't a lot of structure in the beginning. And it wasn't until maybe 6 months into doing the anti-structure, I realized that some structure was actually okay, which is why I created an online course to be a supplement to my one-on-one coaching program. I found that regardless of somebody's background, I was still having the same exact conversation, at least to an extent. So I created the online course, which then allowed me to streamline and make the program a little bit more efficient. And then during those one-on-one coaching calls or presentations, that's when I get to tailor the conversation to the client, right? So, Philip, given XYZ information that you learned this past week, where do you feel like you need the one-on-one support? How are your finances impacted as a result? Does it apply to you at all? Or is it just something good to know for the future? Right. So then I'm not wasting my time having the same conversation over and over and over again, but I'm also, more importantly, not wasting the client's time, because if that conversation could be recorded and they can watch it anytime, why not make it more efficient?
Yeah.
So I do have some structure now, but that structure is just to get over the hump to amplify that efficiency, I'd say.
Yeah. So kind of like a skeleton outline, if you will,
Mhm.
versus like literally writing everything out.
Right.
And that makes a
Right.
lot of sense. And doing those videos, I like that you pair that together. Because, like, for instance, going back to that life insurance example, you could come in and start telling me all about life insurance. And I'm like,
Mhm.
either one, I'm not interested, or
Right.
two, I already have life insurance. So we didn't even need to have the
Right.
conversation. But instead
Right.
of saying, hey, have you heard about life insurance? What do you know about it? Oh yeah, I've
Mhm.
heard about it. I actually have life insurance. I've got this $8 bajillion life insurance policy. It only costs me $2 a month. Like,
I
but
love it.
yeah, I got a great guy. It's a backdoor deal. but but yeah, so like just but going through that, that way those questions can come up rather than you
Mhm.
wasting that time. I think that's perfect. And a lot of people seem to be very rigid with that, or they go the very opposite. And I've been guilty of that as well. No structure at all. They're just like, come on,
Mhm.
we're gonna wing it. We're gonna start asking questions. You can be way off
And I
base.
think,
Yeah.
unstructured presentations for the masses versus structured, it depends on the audience
Mm-hmm.
too. I'm not going to give a structured presentation to a group of high schoolers, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll give unstructured. I'll
Mm-hmm.
talk to them like a person, like they want to be talked to,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But if it's a more professional setting, I'll have some structure, but I'm also not going to be reading every single word off of a PowerPoint either. Because let's be honest, no one wants to sit in a room and listen to that. No one.
Yeah, exactly. And they already read it. It's amazing. We can read faster. For most of us can read faster than we can speak. So
Correct.
your
Yeah,
audience is going to already
absolutely.
read those PowerPoint slides. So obviously, if you have your key points on there, you might say it and then go into
Mhm.
more detail on that. But yeah, you're right. So I like that. So can you, I guess, elaborate just a little bit more on what you mean
Sure.
by structured and unstructured?
Yeah. So unstructured for me would be knowing what I want to talk about and
Mm,
having a mental checklist of some of the flow, but not really having a PowerPoint presentation, not having anything written down, and really just reading the room more than anything.
mm,
Normally, when I have an unstructured presentation, it's telling my story, talking about what I wish I would have done differently, things I did do well, a lot of that advice, and then just giving the basics on how somebody can get started on their financial journey, right? Step one,
mm,
step two, step three, step four. It runs with the flow. I have a lot of room for Q&A in those types of conversations because I want to make sure that those individuals get exactly what they want out of it. And that's also a great way to connect with them.
mm,
For structured presentations, I have a few templates that I go off of, and the templates depend on how much time I have. So if it's a 20-minute presentation, I have one topic. If it's an hour-long presentation, I normally make it 45 minutes and give 15 minutes for Q&A. It's the same content as the 20-minute presentation plus a little bit more. And then if it's an hour-long presentation with 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A, it's everything from that second level and a little bit more. So I just build upon it. So that way I'm not redoing the PowerPoint. I'm not
mm,
redoing the practice, right?
mm,
The first few times I delivered my 20-minute presentation, which was all I gave the first handful of times, I would practice it easily 5 times before each one in any given week, leading up
mm.
every week leading up to the presentation.
Man, that's a lot of time spent after a while doing the same presentation.
Right. But now at this point, I've actually given that presentation off the cuff without the PowerPoint.
Mm,
It's now become an unstructured presentation. The audience doesn't know that,
yeah,
right? They think
yeah.
I'm good at just walking it through, but I've practiced it so many times.
Mm,
But on that PowerPoint, I don't have, like I said, everything written out. I have graphics. I have infographics. I have bullet points. I have questions that I ask the audience. So that way, every now and then I can get their attention back. I have testimonials from other previous clients that will share their story, whether it's video or written. And if it's written, I don't go based off of the whole thing. I let them read that, but I put it in layman's terms. I bring it a little bit quicker to their attention. PowerPoint, I try to do like 1 a minute at most, I'd say. So it's quick. I change up the colors. I make it fun. Yeah. I mean, what else do you want to know about the structured?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I appreciate you mentioning all those things. One thing, and if that's slipping my mind, what I was gonna talk about. So I want to go back real quick to a question I
Sure.
normally ask at the beginning: is
Okay.
how did you get over the fear of public speaking? How did you get over the fear of having these presentations with people?
So honestly, I'm still afraid of it.
What?
I still get nervous. Yeah, I was hella nervous before hopping on this podcast with you. I fidget every time. I grab whatever's near me. If it's a Zoom, I'm fidgeting because it helps me maintain my anxiety a little bit. It's not about overcoming the fear. It's about just doing it anyway. When it's a larger presentation, maybe it's in front of a lot of people or it's in person, things that I don't do as often as like virtual ones, right? I have a playlist that I listen to that I've titled You Got This. And it's 4 of my favorite empowering songs. I will blast it at the top of my lungs. And towards the end, I do one of my power poses. I'm like Superwoman.
Nice.
I put my fists on my hips and I look up, and I try to project that anxiety into adrenaline. So, and honestly, one of the other things that has helped is just announcing the fact that I'm nervous. I can't tell you how many times I've hopped on a presentation and be like, wow, boy, am I nervous. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's get through it, right? Like it gets a chuckle. When they chuckle, I laugh, and it's like, okay, now I can do this. We're all on the same page, because there are very few people that don't get nervous with presentations.
Yeah.
It's just exuding the fact that you can do it anyway.
I love that. So how did you come up with these concepts of like really building yourself up, the power pose, all of that stuff? Where did all that stuff come from? Or that's something
So
you just randomly decided?
No, I mean, I was one of those people who went on the Grey's Anatomy kick a few years ago. I kind of got over it after season 15 or whatever it was. But there's one doctor in the show. Her name is Amelia. My given name, my formal name is Amelia. So I thought that was kind of cool because I don't see a lot of Amelias in TV. And one thing that she does before every surgery is that power pose. So I took that upon myself to start doing that power pose. As for the playlist, I've always loved music. I'm a singer and I've always loved singing and performing. And ironically enough, I'm more comfortable singing in front of a crowd than speaking in front of a crowd. And so I figured if I tap into some of that energy and that confidence with some songs that make me feel really powerful and confident, that it'll kind of just roll right on over.
Nice. Yeah, interesting.
So,
I'm
yeah.
actually the opposite on that because I'll lead singing at church sometimes, and I get more nervous about that than leading a devotional or speaking in front of people. So it's funny how we're all a little different like that.
I feel like with singing, you're normally with other people, or there's instruments and there's other things to kind of, I don't want to say drown you out, but compliment you maybe.
Yeah.
So you're not 100% alone.
Yeah.
Whereas
And I guess
speaking,
that's how it is
sometimes
for us at church too. I mean, we do it where it's just all voices. And so I'm up there on the microphone leading the song, but everybody chimes in like right after the first couple of words, but it's still like kind of nervous going into it.
And it definitely was nerve-wracking for me at first too, but between choir, musical theater, and leading worship and things like that, I tapped into that confidence a little sooner than expected.
Okay, very good. Well, one thing I want to make a note. I'm glad from Grey's Anatomy. Most people seem to feel like they're doctors afterwards from watching so much Grey's Anatomy. They can assess anything. But I'm glad you just picked up the power pose rather than being like, I'm a doctor now.
I'm not a doctor. I went to the online school of Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like a lot of people from that show, they're like, oh, I know what that is. So they're all this doctor now. But I
Right.
did remember my question I wanted to ask you earlier, going back to
Okay.
the presentations and you talk about structure versus unstructured.
Hmm.
I wanted to know whenever you go through your presentation, is it like the basics of financial advice, financial literacy, or
Mm.
is it like super complex for going into the arbitrage and the infinite banking and all this stuff whenever you go up and speak?
Well, first thing I would say is for any presentation, I don't lead with the skill set. I lead with the result, right? I
Hmm.
talk about the pain point, I talk about where they want to be, and then I talk about what they need to do to get from where they are versus where they want to be, right?
Hmm.
If I just start talking about the skill set, let's be honest, budgeting is not glamorous.
Yeah.
That's boring. Come
Yeah.
on. And I live in this world. I love it because I'm a nerd, but there are very few people that sit there and like, yeah, I love budgeting. I love Excel sheets and finance. Like it's just not, it's not reality. So I understand that budgeting is not glamorous. I acknowledge that fact in my presentations. But then I also talk about how, what is glamorous? No longer living paycheck to paycheck, paying off
Hmm.
your debt twice as fast, reaching your financial goals, being able to buy whatever you want without having to worry if you're going to overdraft in your bank account, being able to provide for your kids' education, right?
Hmm.
And I tie those results based off of responses that I received from the audience, and I look at the individuals in the audience, but based off of whatever it is that they said that they wanted
Hmm.
in financial freedom. And then I talk about that's what's glamorous. This is just the tool. So I think that's the first thing that really needs to get put out there, because some people jump so quickly into talking about what they know. People need to know why they should care
Yeah.
first, right?
Yeah.
As for how complex the conversations are, it depends on how much time I have.
Hmm.
The 20-minute presentation is very basic. I do let everybody in the audience walk away with some information that they can implement to get started on their financial journey. But the
Hmm.
more time I have, the more information I provide, right? And I would say no longer than an hour fully presenting is good, because within an hour, I can normally squeeze in 3 main topics of
Hmm.
financial literacy. But after the second one, about halfway through the third one, people start getting that information fatigue. So,
Yeah.
it depends. And if somebody wants to know more information, it's the whole point of presenting too, is to not give them all the answers, have them schedule a call, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have them ask their specific questions to me directly.
Mm. I like that, and I appreciate you bringing that up because I know a lot of people, especially that I work with in coaching, when they start with their presentation, it's like they want to go in all these details. But the funny thing is, the basics to us that are ingrained in this is a daily thing. If we eat, breathe, and live it on a daily
Mm-hmm.
basis, those basic things are mind blowing to people for the most part.
Right.
So it's
Right.
like you can teach those basic concepts and you're going to blow people's minds. And that's where, yeah, like you said, the consultation, getting on that one-on-one call, that's where you can get
Mm-hmm.
into those details. And so I'm glad you brought that out because it's important for people to know that you don't need to go super complex. You can keep it basic,
Right.
talk about the budgeting, talk about the spreadsheets. But I like how you said you open up with what those results are and get people engaged in your presentation. You get engaged. Oh, I want to learn how to get these results rather than just showing them the methods. Because that's another thing
Mm-hmm.
that people kind of the pitfall they fall into is that they'll just go
Right.
right into the methods of here's what you need to do if you want to get rich. But they never tell you the benefits of getting rich or what
Right.
benefits you can get before they tell you the process. So I like that you do
Yeah.
that as well. It's very, very good. Obviously,
Thanks.
you've done it for quite a while. So you do it very well at that.
Thank you. And I would
So,
say, based off of what you previously
mhm,
mentioned about going back to the basics, one thing I've learned, and I'm always surprised by this in any presentation I've given, just because a topic is easy to me or easy to any of your coaching clients that then present, doesn't mean, like you said, it's easy to anybody else. It just means that you're becoming more of an expert,
mhm,
right? Just because you've given the presentation numerous times, you can give it off the back of your hand does not mean that the topic has become any less important or any less sparkly. It's just you've gotten better at it, right? But that's why the why is so important, because that's how you hook in the people. You give them the basics, what you think are the basics, but it's not to them. You're right.
Yeah, but and then you're drawing in on that emotion as well. Like,
Yeah.
what do you want to keep living paycheck to paycheck? Well, no. Okay, well, keep listening to the presentation, and you're
Right.
gonna learn the tools to not have to live paycheck to paycheck anymore. I mean, that sounds pretty awesome to me.
Absolutely.
Not living paycheck
Right.
to paycheck, be able to not worry about money anymore, things of that nature. So that's
Mhm.
so important. But I'm curious, how do you close
Mhm.
out that presentation? I know we talked about how you opened it and what you talk about, which obviously the process, tools, and everything. But how do you
Mhm.
close it out? Is there's obviously different approaches where you can just close out with kind of like a call to action, or you can close
Mhm.
out with pitching them, or there's different ways to close. But what ways do you close, or have you found effective in closing presentations?
I would say it depends on the group, and it
Mm-hmm.
depends on if I'm getting paid for the speaking
Mm,
engagement or
mm,
not. So if I'm getting paid, I normally lead right into a free call to action, which
mm,
is normally having them schedule a free phone call with me. Um, because if I'm getting paid, I normally don't get the email list. Sometimes I do, but that's not
mm,
always the case. Most of the time, I give a free presentation because I want the email list of everybody and I want to be able to sell a call to action. So
mm,
towards the end, I go through, I have my introduction, right? I announce the topic, I talk about why I have that as a title. I walk them through what they can expect from the conversation. I introduce myself, go through the why, go through the how. And then after the how, I talk about, I just straight up ask, like, what would it mean to you if you could achieve financial freedom in 90 days?
mm.
Right. And
Yeah.
I leave that silence for a little bit. What would your life look like if you could achieve that? 90 days is actually possible. This is how. And then I start talking about
Mm,
my program, how I, structure it, why it's beneficial. And all throughout the presentation, I've sprinkled in some of the testimonials from my
mm,
previous clients, which have a natural flow right
mm.
throughout it. I normally sprinkle in testimonials when there's normally an objection, right? Well, I hate budgeting. I have tons of clients who hate budgeting. None of my clients like budgeting, even after working with me. But you know what? They like the results it gets them. Here's what
Yeah.
XO got. Here's what AO got. Here's what all these clients got, right? So you sprinkle in the testimonials along the way. So then when you provide that call to action of how they can work with you, and that's what I do, it's normally an easy close. Sometimes I'll do a coupon code, right? I said, this is normally what it costs. Um, from now until tomorrow, you can get XYZ% off. Here's where you sign up. Depending on the room, sometimes I'll also throw in the free phone call if somebody's on the fence. But I always follow up with an email to the individuals in that group with either a recording of the presentation if it was on Zoom,
Mm.
the free phone call, and of course that paid call to action as well.
Okay, well, awesome. Awesome. I appreciate you going through that close there. Now, I've got one last question for you I want to ask. And I know we've been talking a lot about presentations, a lot about financial stuff throughout that. I know it wasn't necessarily financial advice, but about how you talk about finances. But this
Mhm.
question is, if you only could speak about one message for the rest of your life, what would that message be?
I would say it's probably the motto that I try to live by, which is be afraid, but do it anyway. No
Mm,
matter what you face in life, there's going to be something that instills some type of fear in you, whether it's self doubt, whether it's lack of information, whether it's a phobia, right? But that fear doesn't have to keep you from moving forward, right?
yeah.
Jump, be afraid, but do it anyway.
Ooh, that's gonna be your next speech, right?
Oh, maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how I've gotten this far.
Yeah, I love that. That's so true. We have to take that jump. We can't be afraid because that fear is going to keep us where we're at. So why not
Hmm.
at least take the jumps? Kind of, I think of the analogy of asking that person out on a date. You're already not dating them. And if they tell you
Right.
no, you're still not dating them. So nothing changed.
Right.
But if they say yes, then clearly something changed. You got the result you wanted. But
Right.
if you never go after it, you'll of course have the no then. So make
Hmm.
sure you take that jump, just go after it.
Yeah.
Love
And
that.
it doesn't mean that you have to remove that fear to move forward.
Hmm.
You know, a lot of people feel like they need to fix the fear before they make a decision. Why can't you do both?
Mm,
You know,
mm.
why can't you have that fear and just take baby steps forward?
Yeah, so true. Well, Mills, I have enjoyed this conversation immensely. If people want to reach out to you to get some coaching from you or just to follow you because you're awesome and you make
No.
amazing videos. I love watching your videos. They're very, very corny. Then there's, it's funny
They
ones.
are
There's very
corny.
clever ones. I love it though. I'm all about corny. I'm husky. I'm just kidding. You didn't get that corn husk. But anyways, I love the videos that you do. So you're always putting out very good videos, very good
Thank
content.
you.
So if people want to follow you or get some coaching from you, where's the best place for them to reach out?
Yeah. So if you are looking for some quick bits of information, you can follow me on Instagram at millsknowsbills.com. If you want some longer videos on financial literacy, you can check me out at YouTube, also Mills Knows Bills. And of course, you're always welcome to message me directly at my email, mills@millsknowsbills.com.
Nice. Well, Mills, I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Have a great evening.
You too.